Good morning, everyone. As Paul mentioned, 6 years ago, I decided to move to Minnesota from Washington, D.C. And my family and friends thought I was absolutely crazy because I'm not very much into winter. I don't do winter sports. I am absolutely petrified to drive in snow. And then we've got this whole extra add-on of black ice. And so they just thought I was nuts. But I decided that I had this romantic notion of returning to my birthplace, growing deep roots, buying a home, meeting Mr. Right, hopefully, and ending up on Walden Pond. So that was my dream. We have a lot of ponds and lakes here, so I thought my chances were pretty good. But anyway, so my life did not go quite according to plan. And so I did end up renting an apartment on a lake, but instead of Walden Pond, I ended up staring at this for 4 long winter months alone. Okay, and so I have to tell you that when you've moved to a new area and you don't know people and you feel very alone, very lonely because you haven't made connections yet, staring at a view like this makes it feel more like you're Henry David Thoreau on Walden Pond rather than Walden Pond. And a couple of things I want to share with regards to that 3.5 years on this lake, a sad thing and kind of a funny story as well. In 2009, I had to put my 14-year-old cat to sleep. She had cancer, and I couldn't think of a single person that I could ask to do that with me. And so I had to drive my cat to the vets and have her put down and drive home alone. It was a devastating experience not to have someone support me through that because I'd had that cat such a long time. But that was a sad story. But then on the flip side, kind of a funny story to share, I adopted a kitten named Darcy, very cute. And a couple months later, I was traveling for work, and my neighbor Donna, who lived across the hall from me, would always take care of my cat. She'd go into my apartment and feed my cats when I was traveling. And so I got home from a business trip on Super Bowl Sunday, and I put the key in my door and went in, and no Darcy. And she would always run to the door and greet me. So I was kind of surprised. But I found a note in the kitchen from my neighbor Donna that said, "Lisa, I didn't know what time you'd be home, but I just want you to know Darcy's over in my apartment watching the Super Bowl with me." Okay, well, the funny thing about that is I was racking my brain, and I had never been invited over to Donna's apartment for so much as a cup of coffee, but yet my cat got invited to watch the Super Bowl with her, which is a major time commitment, I thought. And so anyway, and I went to retrieve Darcy, and Donna was very disappointed that I went to pick her up. But anyway, my friend Martha quipped that I better be really careful because Darcy's awfully cute, and sooner or later we're going to find her little kitten face on the side of milk cartons all over the United States. So, but anyway, so I started figuring out how can I solve this problem of my loneliness. I want to do some research and some reading and find out more about this. And so I came across a book called The Lonely American by Dr. Jacqueline Olds, and I actually met her when she gave a talk at the University of Minnesota, and she assured me that my loneliness was not unique to Minnesota, that I would face this no matter where I'd move, because this is a nationwide problem. And so I want to share some statistics that I've learned since that time about this, okay? So the number of people living alone in our society in the United States is really on the increase. According to the 2010 census, it's 28% of U.S. households are occupied by someone living alone. That's 1 in 7 adults. Now, in case you think that that's elderly people as the biggest demographic, it's actually not. 15 million people between the ages of 35 and 64 live alone. That's followed by the elderly, ages 65 plus, that's 10 million people. So basically, people living alone now are more common than people in nuclear families. And then finally, 50% of American adults are single. I find these statistics really comforting because all of a sudden, I don't feel so alone in my aloneness. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about loneliness. The General Social Survey found that between 1985 and 2004, the number of people we can really talk to, our confidants, dropped by 1/3 from 3 to 2. And those people that we can really talk to now are probably going to be in our immediate households as opposed to our extended social circles. We're so busy commuting and working and doing chores and taking care of our families that our social circles are becoming smaller and smaller because we just don't have the time to participate in bowling leagues and do all those social groups that we used to engage in. Okay? Another statistic, ARB found that in a 2010 study that 35% of people surveyed over the age of 45 considered themselves lonely. Again, lest you think it's the elderly, it was not. It was actually people in their 40s and 50s that were most commonly suffering from loneliness. And then finally, analytic review of 148 research studies of more than 300,000 people confirmed that social relationships are comparable to health factors such as obesity, smoking, alcoholism in terms of our mortality. And so basically, the strength of our social connections are vital to our mental and physical health as much as healthy habits that we maintain to have a long and healthy life. Okay, so basically, after doing all this research, I decided it was time to make some changes. In 2010, I launched a website. When your life doesn't go according to Plan A, you've got to go to Plan B. So I called the website Plan B Connections. And I started compiling resources for people like myself who are interested in forging stronger social ties. I also started delivering workshops in the Twin Cities called Making and Maintaining Meaningful Social Connections, okay? And so I also decided that it was time to commit to Minnesota. I needed to get off that frozen lake. And so I looked to buy a home, and I interviewed people in the community I was considering before I moved there. And basically, they confirmed that it had a very strong sense of community, and indeed that was the case. I moved into a townhouse, and within a few weeks, I was invited to a potluck that was given by my neighbors to welcome me to the alley. I was invited to join a group of women called Women Who Cook. They get together for dinner once a month, and I don't cook, so here's a picture of them in my kitchen having happy hour, okay? All right. Also, I decided to start something called a Resilience Circle in my community for people like myself, possibly living alone, who could use some support and help once in a while. Resilience Circles are groups of neighbor helping neighbor, okay, 10 to 20 people or so, and they decide to exchange goods and services and neighborly favors in this really tough economy of ours. And so members of our Resilience Circle have traded childcare, house sitting, pet sitting services. A member brought me supplies and medicine when I got the flu this January. A neighbor's husband died, so we coordinated a week's worth of dinners for her. And so we've really banded together to support each other. And actually, we've supported people outside our community through this Resilience Circle as well. And so here's a picture of Easter dinner that we did for homeless teens in St. Paul. We wanted to make it festive, so we put in Peeps in addition to the taco bar that we made for them. But we've made 2 dinners for them the last 2 Easters. Okay, we also connect in our community over neighborhood projects. These are my beloved neighbors, Jim and Pat. They heard that I wanted to put a garden on the side of my townhouse, and the instant response was, how soon can we get started? So on a wet June, muddy Saturday last summer, we took off for the home improvement store to get supplies, and my garage became a construction zone where they cut the timbers. And I said to them, it's wet, it's muddy, you sure you want to do this? But they were determined. They got that garden in within 5 hours, and here we are. After the garden's in, the sun has come out, very symbolic, the project is over, and we're about to go to lunch. I took them to lunch following that project. And I just want to point out that Jim and Pat are actively engaged in making new connections in our community. Pat, on the left, is actively engaged in tending our community gardens with his wife, Donna. And Jim is a retired maintenance worker, and he does projects around our development for a very low fee, which is especially helpful to our seniors on limited incomes. And I want to add that Jim and his wife Barb have adopted me as their in-town child, and so I get invited over for holiday dinners. So it's just been, I have wonderful neighbors. I'm extremely proud of them. A couple days after the garden was finished, Jim surprised me with this sign. He planted it in the garden without telling me, very aptly named the Friendship Garden. And I think this symbolizes so much my message today, which is that we need to cultivate and continue to grow social connections over our entire lives because they are so important to both our mental and physical health. I wanted to share one more story with regards to how having a strong sense of community can really be so helpful and vital to people who are more off the radar. My neighbor Laura had cataract surgery about 2 years ago, and she was not recovering well. And one night I was to take her soup, and she didn't answer the door. And we lost touch with Laura for 36 hours, and we were really worried. So finally I called the police. The police came. They took a ladder, they climbed up on her deck, they looked through her kitchen window. She had fallen on her kitchen floor, and she was conscious, but she could not stand on her own. So they had to take down her front door. She was rushed to the hospital in an ambulance where she was diagnosed with pneumonia. And there's a happy ending to this story because fortunately she made a full recovery, and now she's made arrangements that she and her cousin, who also lives alone, call or email each other every day to make sure that they're both okay. But I think this story, again, just shows how important it is that we keep vigilant and keep watchful with regards to people who are off the social radar who could really use our help and support. Just a slide to point out some of the strategies that I've employed. One that's mentioned up here is Nextdoor.com, which is kind of a combination Angie's List and Craigslist. It's a free online community where you register through using your address. We have 90 neighbors in my community now on Nextdoor.com. We share community news, such as an upcoming street reconstruction project, items for sale or giveaway, community announcement, community news, and it's just been a really great tool. Also, you can create social groups on Nextdoor.com. So one person created a book club. For others like myself who don't cook, I've created a Gals Night Out group, so we go out to dinner once a month. But it's been a fantastic tool. And so finally, I just want to leave you with one final quote from Justice Sonia Sotomayor. As you discover what strength you can draw from your community in this world from which it stands apart, look outward as well as inward, and please build bridges rather than walls. Thank you all very much.